All right. Hello and welcome everyone back to our podcast, The Center for Leadership, the podcast where leadership begins at the center, you. I am Carrie Terhark, your host, and I believe that in order to lead others effectively, we must first learn to lead ourselves. This segment is called Beyond the Title, where we have conversations to explore raw, unscripted, behind the scenes stories of people discovering how to turn their passion into purpose. They'll share practices, insights, and tools that will help you stay centered, resilient, and ready to empower those in your care. Leadership isn't just a role, it is a choice, and it starts with showing up for yourself. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome, Alex. This is my friend Alex Suchman, and I am super excited to have you on today and share a little bit about what you do and how you bring tools and engagement to help people work together. So we'll hear a little bit about your story and all of the things there, but welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited. Any conversation with you, I know, is going to be a lot of fun.
Good. I love to talk. I said that was the booth I was looking for at the career fair in high school, and it wasn't there. So glad that I have figured it out now. But so Alex, I ask everyone the same question, and it is, what lights your fire? What gets you up in the morning?
Well, let's say fire. Well, I love playing games. Like literally the first thing I do every morning when I wake up is play some of the New York Times word games and just like gets my brain going, helps me wake up. Um, and I'm always looking for opportunities throughout my day to work in little games and playful moments that it just helps you think more creatively. It gets you out of a rut that you're in. You can change your emotions so quickly as if you're in a bad mood, but you do something that's sort of fun and engaging. It totally shifts your mood around. Um, so that's probably the most important one.
I love that. And that's probably what we're going to talk a lot about today. Uh, I spent the weekend, well, I shouldn't say the weekend, but I have two grown kids, and my daughter had, and her friend had texted me and said, let's meet up at the bar. They're playing bingo tonight. And I was like,
I
all right,
love
all
bingo.
right, I'll play bingo. And my husband's like, you're gonna play bingo? And I wasn't, at all, there were people from all ages there, and it was so much fun to play bingo. We played 10
Mhm.
games and just to have conversation and laugh and just relax.
Did you do
Gaming
all the
does that.
different? So it's like four corners and the X and the T and
Yeah, the postage stamp, the Christmas tree, which I
yep.
had never played before.
Oh, I've never seen that one.
Yeah, so it's the one at the top and then three all the way across, and then the very line, just the middle one. So that one I had to use a little pen to mark out where I needed to dot, because I was like, oh no, I'm gonna get lost here. But yeah, it's like it's so crazy how a game that you say we want to go play bingo, and then you go and just the experience that creates. So when did you figure out that games was giving you that experience? What was it that was like, oh, I want to play games?
I mean, I always loved playing games as a kid. And always like wait, I was never super competitive unless I was playing with my brother, in which case it was like everything was a death match.
Yes.
Um, but it was just I I can get it in my own head and go in really weird places. And so when I'm spending time with other people or even just doing something myself where it's structured, I really enjoy that. And it almost lets me be like the hard decisions are made so I can just have the emotional experience and the thoughts surrounding whatever that structured activity is. And so from a really young age, I was, if I wasn't playing a game with somebody else, like doing something creative or like doing puzzles. Um, then as I got a little older, like when I was a teenager, like all through middle school and high school and college, I was a big summer camp person.
Okay.
And that is, you know, what makes for a fun summer camp experience is if you have great relationships with the people around you and you're living with them, overnight camp, you're living with them. And I started to look at games as a great way to build a sense of community really quickly. And that just stuck with me. That really not only just in the summer camp context, but in as I started to have like jobs and when I went to college. And that's something that's always been so fascinating to me, is how much better life is when you have positive relationships with the people around you. And I think playing a game is a great way to start to do that. Um, and then eventually, maybe 20 or so years into my career, recognized that games are really valuable in a professional setting too. So now my work is all about games, which is, I think if I
Oh,
could go back and tell 9-year-old Alex that someday your job is going to be around games, she would have been pretty impressed.
yeah, yeah. I that was kind of, as you were starting to talk, one of the what came to mind was that relationship thing, where it was like, when I think back, and if you're listening to this, I want you to think about like what comes to mind when you think about playing a game when you were a kid, lately, what is the feeling that you get? And there's different kinds of games, right? But when you're in a team, some sort of team game, just like you said, like there is something that creates that community very quickly, that you're really trying to help each other, that you're kind of figuring out the communication so that your team can win. And you have people on your team that are competitive, and then you have people who aren't so competitive. So tell me a little bit about how you've seen that dynamic work through games.
Yeah, well, in my work now, the way that we use games is to unlock conversations that would be pretty hard to have without some sort of shared experience. And things like people who are really motivated by competition and people who are not only not motivated, that can actually be a demotivator for them if like individuals are pitted against each other. That's a really important difference to explore with the people that you're working with, to know what are people's drivers, what are sources of people's anxiety. And so just talking about like who's really driven by competition and why, and what does that do for you, and like what mechanisms of competition are helpful on a team, because that will help you inspire those people. But who really doesn't like that competitive piece? Who doesn't want to feel like you're competing with your colleagues, and rather you're competing as a group where you either win together or lose together, succeed together, or fail together. Maybe that's something that is more motivating to other people. And so just using that as a way to have those conversations about differences that might show up as conflict, they might cause a lot of tension in a more high stakes setting, can be just examined in the setting of playing a game as just learning about people. And the more you understand each other, the more you can be empathetic, and the more you're willing to maybe adapt some of your behavior to better accommodate others, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think about just my experience in groups that I've worked with. And when you have somebody who, I mean, I talk about all qualities being good, right? So if you're somebody who's a super collaborator and you want to see other people win, and you're that helper that wants to support other people, or you're the person who's super competitive, like that's all good. It's all competitive. It's all helpful. But when we get like really, really stressed out, or we overuse those qualities, they can be very damaging either way, right? Where you're like, I don't really care. I'm completely disconnected, right? So I've disengaged from the group. And on the other side, I'm win at all costs. Like I'll throw anybody under the bus in order to get what I want. And I like that you talk about this being in a kind of a low stakes environment, where you can now have that conversation to say, what happens when, right? What happens when I completely disengage and I don't care and I walk away and let the group decide what to do? What are the consequences of
Mhm.
that? And what are the consequences of me bulldozing over everybody to get what I want?
Yeah.
What are the results of that? So it's like a practice for
Yes,
life.
exactly. Exactly. And one thing that really concerns me that I've been noticing more and more over the last, decade and a half, is how much of our time is spent either communicating with other people asynchronously, or just like consuming information on our own, whether we're reading or watching something or scrolling social media. And when it's either one way or asynchronous communication, you don't get to see how the way that you show up and the way you communicate and the things that you do affect other people. And that's a skill, a type of intelligence that's really atrophied for a lot of people. And so, if you're not used to practicing that type of self-awareness and situational awareness, there's a good chance that you're going to do things that frustrate other people, not intentionally, but just because you're not attuned to thinking that way. And I think that's really dangerous for us as like a species, as cultures, is to be totally only able to see our own, what's in our own immediate view and not other people. I think that is, can really contribute to the detriment of human potential and our ability to solve different problems. And so I think it's so important to work on those skills and to recognize, like, oh wow, the way that I just asked that question, I can tell by Carrie's face that either she doesn't understand it or maybe she's interpreting in a different way. And that is not at all what I want to happen. I don't want our relationship to be affected by something that I said that came out the wrong way. So I am going to make sure that I correct that and make sure that uh, we get to a place of better understanding.
Yeah. There's something too about, as we've moved into this virtual space, we kind of had to for COVID. We've now adjusted to that, and a lot of meetings and a lot of things that we're doing are staying there. And you point out the fact that sometimes we're working on projects together, but we're never ever having a conversation or being face to face through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's only going to get more confusing as AI comes along. Because what I thought about when you were saying that is like, it's almost like when I'm working on a project with somebody and we're in a document together, it's not like I'm talking to somebody, it's like I'm talking to AI, and you kind of lose that human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our brains we can kind of start to disengage, or we can start to mix what that relationship really is. So you
Mm-hmm.
can do this virtually is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you can absolutely do this virtually. And I think, like, for teams that work together virtually, I think it's really important to play together virtually, to practice using the communication channels that are actually open to you. Because,
yeah,
it's harder to see facial expressions on Zoom or on Teams or whatever, but it's possible. But it's like, what do you look for? Or even as a group, maybe we can set some norms and expectations for each other. It's like, hey, if somebody says something that makes you feel uncomfortable, raise your hand, or put something in the chat that's something we need to go back and talk about, so that you could still express it even though you can't necessarily see people's facial expressions, and then it can be something
yeah,
that the group doesn't just skip over, but goes back to explore later.
yeah. Where have you seen just groups really connect with this or really embrace it and see a transformation?
um that's a great question. Well, I mean, all the companies that we work with, when we go in and facilitate something uh, with a team, they're already, obviously they hire us because they're excited about the idea of having play-based learning and
Yeah,
development. And so for teams that are already curious, see the value in building a solid foundation of trust and collaboration and accountability, shared accountability, um, they're predisposed to think that this is going to be great. They are really excited to get to know each other better and to think, like, how do I use this new knowledge I have about someone, or these new observations that I made, to make sure that when we work to, the next time we're in a meeting together, it goes even better. Or, if I have a certain type of question, I absolutely know who the person I should go to is, because I now recognize that they have this skill or this totally different perspective. Um, a couple of weeks ago, I did a keynote at the Michigan Lean Consortium's annual conference, and it was the first time I spoke to like a full audience of lean practitioners.
yeah,
And they loved it, because lean is all about looking for opportunities for improvement, tiny, like microscopic ones that add up. And they tend to normally think about the physical work environment or processes or tools, but they really like the idea of relational waste, and like how much is of quality of the experience of work is compromised by having negative interactions with the people that you work with. And so they just took it and ran with it and got got so excited to start applying that, which was really, really fun for me.
I that's so encouraging to hear because I feel like that's a shift that's happening in industry right now, that there is a general understanding that relationships and workplace culture affects the bottom line, right? And how productive we are and the experiences that we have both to work together and to our end client. And I think for a long time, it was just ignored. It was like, well, this is a job. You just come to it and you do it and you go home and you work on your work on your relationships outside of work. But the realization of, okay, now we really need to figure out how to have this well-oiled machine where people are wanting not only to work together, but look forward looking and start to think before there's an issue, start to address things before they come. And that all ties back to relationships and trust and just being able to know who to go to and how to work through problems. So give me an example of a game that you love to use, whether it's just family or with the team, or what's something that you're like, this is just so fun to do.
Yeah, one game that lately has been totally, a slam dunk, home run, whatever analogy you want to use, both in personal and professional settings. It's called The Mind, and it's a card game, not with the usual, four suit deck of cards, um, but the cards have. Each card has a number on one side between 1 and 100, and the deck comes with every single number between 1 and 100. And it's a nonverbal collaborative game. So you shuffle up the cards, and for everyone who's playing, everybody in the first round gets one card, and you look at your card, and you can't show your card to other people. You can't talk once the game has started, and you can't in any way gesture what your number is. But as a group, you have to play your numbers in order from lowest to highest. And so it's all about just reading body language and facial expressions and getting a sense of people's risk tolerance or risk aversion and their sense of pacing, and just intuiting.
Oh, lost you for a second. You're there.
Sorry about that. My Zoom just crashed.
No
Um,
worries.
just intuiting what they're doing, and sort of reading each other. And, of course, the first couple of rounds, cards get played out of order, but you just redeal. And after a couple of rounds, you start to get a sense of, okay, Carrie's more cautious than I am. So I don't want to throw my card down too quickly because she might have a lower card, but she's just paying more attention to, checking everybody's face and making eye contact. And I might notice somebody else is getting really impatient and like hates the fact that we can't talk and sort of like bouncing off the walls. So maybe we need to come up with some nonverbal way of letting them communicate, um, just so that they stay focused and engaged. And it's so simple, but it's so engaging. It's so much fun. People really, you want to succeed. So people start paying more attention to what other people are doing, and trying to adjust their own behavior to something that's going to work better for their group. And it gives so much to talk about after each round. But just seeing how people feel when they successfully get through a round, they're like screaming with joy.
Yeah.
It's a game that has no stakes. There's no real life app, like nothing about the game is going to translate into real life, directly. Um, it's a quick thing, but people get so excited, and that like we did it, we succeeded together, recognizing how much more satisfying a victory is when it is collaborative.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's so great, and I mean, you can use it in so many different ways when you get into team development and leadership development and culture.
Yeah. I'm curious to know because I get this every once in a while when, I do facilitation, and my facilitation isn't technology, right? It's a big sticky wall and it's paper, and we write things and we handwrite things, and
You can see
it's
my post-its
yeah.
behind me.
Yes. It's getting your body and your mind and your heart all connected and engaged in the same space, right? To fully bring yourself into something. And it's a really an immersive experience. And sometimes the pushback that I get from people who have taken our course, or I'm walking into a group, I have fidgets on the table, I have all those things. And they're like, well, but this is a group of C-suites, or this is a group of lawyers or doctors, right? So maybe not all the fluff. So when you hear that, because I'm sure you've heard it, what's your response? What do you say? I want to know. I'll tell you what I say.
Yeah, we definitely hear that. Well, these people are serious. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we're very serious too. I mean, I point out like think about over the course of a day, over the course of a week, over the course of your tenure at any position, um, what is the impact of having negative interactions with your colleagues, of meetings that don't seem to result in anything, of communicating something to people who totally don't understand it, and then they deliver something that's way off base from what you were expecting, from little sniping that happens when someone's in a bad mood and takes it out on somebody else. Those are the types of things that truly lead to burnout, to disengagement, to uh, real anger and real conflict. And those are all so avoidable. So if you point out just how more effective people can be in their jobs, how much more effective you can be as a leader if you have the social and emotional intelligence to understand the dynamics and to understand how to meet different people, it's just going to make the experience of work so much smoother and so much more satisfying. And I think that's something that even the most serious of executives want.
Yeah.
Even doctors who do the most cutting edge stuff, or lawyers who they have to convince people of their approaches, or they have to keep people engaged in pretty tedious research projects and all of
Yeah.
that. If you have good relationships, it's just going to go better.
Yeah. Well, I love that. It's a great answer. I know I usually will say something, to the effect of like, we're just all humans. And I've seen lawyers, doctors, C-suites on vacation. They're not walking around in suit and tie and, all uptight, right? And it's all about the environment in which you create. And so you get to show up in a space that's sometimes it's great to let go and let go of that expectation and show up into a space that's I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be somewhere different. And I
Yeah.
think to that point too, and you probably see this in your team work too, that those statuses, that power dynamic kind of levels out when
Yeah.
you're in a game, when you're in something
Yes.
that's collaborative in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, so much of it is there are certain organizations that are just never going to get it. If
No.
something is very top down, command and control type of leadership, fine. No, it's not going to work with you because you're not willing to recognize that uh, relationships and mutual respect and understanding is a crucial foundation for a successful workplace. And I'm not going to convince you of that.
Right.
But if you recognize, you know what, if it would be a lot easier if leaders knew how to communicate with their teams on what they expect, or new policies, or go, lead them through change processes. It's going to go a lot better if you can pay attention to the people side of it. Then they get excited. They want to improve. They want to get more out of their people,
Yeah.
and have their
Yeah.
people feel a sense of satisfaction too. I mean, so much work, even in the age of AI and working asynchronously and virtual, there's still a lot of collaboration that has to happen. And that depends on a relationship. If somebody's asking you to do something, but you don't know them, or you don't have any type of rapport with them, what's going to motivate you to do it, and vice versa?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I want to switch gears just for a moment if we can, and I want to talk about just how you how did you discover that this was a business, that you could do this as a business and it not just be something that, what was that journey like?
Very accidental.
Yeah.
uh, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we have this idea for a business and let's do it. I was right before Barometer, I had my own consultancy and was doing operations, organization development with small companies and small to mid-sized nonprofit organizations. And I would get hired for what seemed like a very straightforward project. Come in and help us organize or develop um, our shared drive, our sort of knowledge management piece, or we need to figure out the like operations and planning process for this event that we have every year. Sounds really straightforward. But I would get in there, and if it was something where more than one person was involved in it, the hardest part was dealing with the interpersonal dynamics. Some people weren't willing to change certain sections because they felt really attached to it and they had created it. And so if nobody will agree to change their pieces, you can't really develop anything. It's sort of
Yeah.
a conversation ender. If people don't trust each other enough to talk about what could be better, because they don't want to acknowledge that they're not already perfect, you can't have those conversations. And that really fascinated me. It was, we're all, as much as we like to think that we mature when we get to adulthood and we're mature in professional settings, we all kind of revert back to that, um, self-preservation and letting our emotions sometimes guide our thinking more than it needs to. But I couldn't just tell people like, hey, you get really defensive at this. Like they sort of had to realize it themselves. And I
Mhm.
was looking for different experiential learning tools and strategies that I could take to my clients. And around that time, I met one of my co-founders, Peter, who's a game designer. And we just really hit it off and started experimenting with when you're playing a game with somebody and you talk about the experience of playing both during and after, you get insight into how they think. And you're experiencing the exact same situation, but your inner sense making and your interpretations and feelings are very, very different. And so it's a really good way to be like, oh wow, I really get into the groove when I'm doing this type of activity, but it stresses you out a lot. Let's talk about why that is.
Yeah.
And the insights that come from the game so directly map to the working environment. I mean, sort of what we were saying before with like competitive versus non-competitive people. Um, and so I would take these games back and do them with my clients, and it was like holding up a mirror. Like this is how you all, as a group and individually, act. Is this what you want to be
Yeah.
perceived as? Is this how
Yeah.
is this the best way you can get things done? And it really opened people's eyes up to like, oh yeah, I do tend to um, expect people to read my mind, or I'm not good at actively listening to other people, or I do tend to want to get things done really quickly and not pay attention to whether other people are with me, or if they still have questions or need something else. And then once they recognize that, they are excited to change because they can see that something small that they do will have such a big impact, not only on other people, but just the overall outcome and experience of their work.
Mm.
And so what started out as this little side project of like thinking about games, eventually we're like, okay, we've built several different methodologies and frameworks for how to connect specific games to specific types of outcomes and for how to facilitate games and integrate them into different programs. I guess we should start a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And unique in that, right? And just a really, like I said, I think it just goes so well with so many other ideas of collaboration and team building, right? And understanding, it just, I love the idea of play. I love the idea. And we, how many times do we go to a session and we do an icebreaker, but it has no purpose.
Mhm.
Right? And I love that the games and the things that you have, that there's a purpose, right? It's getting us to think about things in a certain way, to engage in a certain way, so that there's a reflective piece back, like you said, that is a very low stakes way to start that conversation, to be like, oh, I now see why you get irritated with me, right? Because I don't think that I'm
Mhm.
competitive. I think when I come to work, I leave that at the door. But when I come in here, and I don't get my way, I now understand the way that I try and push or influence or do whatever that I'm trying to do. Because I really comes back to me, and it's more of a, I am afraid to let go of. rather
Mm-hmm.
than being competitive. Like I can say that I'm competitive, but when it comes down to it, it's really like, well, I'm just really afraid to let go of that.
Yeah, and those are very different. They might show up the same way on the
Yeah.
surface, but underneath, that's really different and like requires really different things internally to change your reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a business owner, what are your some like things that you're just super proud of? What are the things that you're like, this is just brings me joy as a business owner?
So after about a year, maybe 2 years of being a business and like working out how do you facilitate games into learning and development and coaching and different types of programs, um, my network from the work I was doing before was a lot of other consultants, facilitators, coaches, and they started expressing interest of like, oh, this would be really cool to do with my clients. And that really flipped something with us to say, we should train other people on our methodologies so that more people can bring this play-based approach into their work. And so we built this whole certification and have done, I don't know, 12 or 14 cohorts at this point. And have about 80 people trained. And like, that's amazing. It's like, okay, we created this approach. Other people think it's valuable and want to incorporate it into their own business practices. Um, and we're still doing that and we're still getting people signing up for the cohorts. So that feels really huge. I'm sure that both of us and everybody listening has sat through some really boring trainings or retreats that just didn't seem to go anywhere, just seemed like a, a waste of time, not really connected to anything. Or gone to a conference that felt totally unsatisfying and it was really hard to meet other people and network. And all that, it's not hard to change it. It just requires thinking a little bit outside the box. And the way to do this is just to get more people having that experience and leading those types of experiences and showcasing what's possible. So for me, that just feels like an amazing accomplishment.
And a word of caution to our listeners that once you experience this or something in a conference or a speaker or session that's super engaging, the ones that were bad are going to feel even worse.
I am a terrible audience member now. Terrible.
As I That has been me too. It's just I go back and I was like, what? Like Bueller. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's so important that, and our brains just need to be connection, right? To have something
Mm-hmm.
that's triggering us out of our pathway, that's something that's new, that's drawing us in. And then as we look at relationships, right, to continue to build and to find that. I want to know too, I know that being a business owner isn't just always easy and fun. So what's kind of something that's been challenging as you have been on this journey?
Yeah. So because we sort of had built this framework and we're like, oh, I guess we should create a business out of it. That's very backwards to how I think most people start businesses. So we've created all this stuff. We know that it's really valuable. But now, in order to get to financial sustainability, it's like, okay, how do we get this out to more people?
Yeah.
Um, and for some of the reasons we talked about, it's a pretty radical thing to be like, people shouldn't be miserable all the time at work or at professional events. People should be engaged and they're going to pay much more attention if they feel some sort of joy or some sort of empowerment or some type of connection with with the purpose. And so just figuring out, do we frame it in terms of culture? Do we frame it in terms of
Yeah.
operation? Do we frame it in terms of leadership development? Because it fits in all of those. But what's going to best pique the interest of potential clients, of potential partners. That's
Yeah.
that's always a struggle. It's like what's the right
What's
messaging?
the connection? Yeah. I think for me too, I mean, I've been in business by myself for myself for 2 years. And the first year was just survival, right? It was just figuring out, I just need work. I just need income to come in, right? No, I know the skill that I have. How do I make it? How do I turn it into income? And the second year, kind of settled in a little bit. And now as I'm moving, I'm like rebranding already. And it felt kind of weird to rebrand already. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's just like I felt like I was just doing things and they were kind of all over the place. It was like, why am I doing this? What is my overall, vision, or what is the big thing that I'm looking to do? And to that point, like, sometimes we build things as the plane is flying, or we build things backwards. And so now we got to think about scalability. So what is it, right, that's going to create that sustainability that can get you all out of having to do all of the pieces all of the time? And then, because pretty soon you're going to find yourself in that burnout space too, where you're like, I've created my dream and I'm miserable, right?
Mm-hmm.
so so it's that balance of, and I think that's kind of where I'm at, where I, again, like, I really want to figure out what the bigger picture looks like and how I can scale it and do the systems work within, so that it starts to generate something that I can hand off and start doing things and spending my time where I want to spend my time. But
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I mean, the reason I went out on my own in the first place was because I totally burned out in my previous career and felt, you know, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneurial person, never was like, I can't wait to start a business. But I felt like the only way that I can do the work that I want, but have clear parameters around how much I will work, whose stress I will take on, making sure that I had a good balance in how I was spending my time. I felt like I had to work for myself for a while, and
yeah,
which is great. But then when you get to a point where you want to take your business to the next level, I could spend 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on my business and still not get everything done and have absolutely no time for other things. And then I would get burnt out in my own business. And I really don't want that to happen. I know what that does to me emotionally. I know what that does to me in terms of my ability to do great work and to follow through with things. So it's such a tough balance to
it
strike.
is. It is. I One of the things that I have been doing, I'm not a morning, and I've said this on this podcast before, but I'm not a morning person, and I'm also like, so to get up and to exercise early in the morning is not going to happen, and of course it won't happen at the end of the day either. So when I'm home, scheduling time in the middle of the day to go do it, right, and whatever that looks like. And there's so many times that I've caught myself like being, oh, you shouldn't go today because you got work to do, right? You gotta get. And just as you said, like, if that's the attitude that you have, you're never leaving your desk. There's always work to do. And I think for me, the big mind shift in that is that, one, priorities, and knowing what is going to happen now, and getting out of that idea that everything has to be right now, and still taking the time, and man, like this last probably 6 months, I haven't barely turned my computer on the weekend at all. Like, I haven't. And emails can wait, other things that come in can wait. And it's refreshing. It's refreshing to come back and be
So
like,
refreshing.
oh, I did something. And this is, you know what? And I'm no further behind than I was before, because I'm coming with energy, where if I would have worked through the weekend, I would have been dragging. And I had a colleague once who loves games and loves competition. And so she would set a timer. So her game was, she would set a timer for 15 or 20 minutes, and she would do whatever task it was for 15, 20 minutes. And then when it went off, right, she would get up and go do something. And then she'd come back and do another task. And, but she was so focused in that 15 or 20 minutes because it was a game for her. Like, how much can I get done in this amount of time?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than sitting down and it being like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then it moves over here. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I still have everything on my to-do list that I had at the start of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so many lessons that we can learn from each other on helping, just to keep us healthy and sane, so that we can deliver these amazing services to the community. So thank you for the
Yeah.
work that
There's
you're
a real
doing.
decision fatigue because when you
Yeah,
have your own business, like there's not really a template out there because every business is totally different. And I definitely have days where like I'm lucky because I have two co-founders, so that there's three of us, but where it's like, oh, like I don't care. Just somebody else make the decision. I will happily go along with some plan of action, but I don't have the bandwidth to weigh these alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think building a team where you have that partnership where you're able to say, and I don't know, I think a team of three is really good, where if like one is like, you know what? Yeah, I don't have the bandwidth. I'm trusting in the two of you to do that and to be on board. And then a week later, it's somebody else that's got that you're able to work together and kind of and trade off.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, good for you. I love hearing about everything that you all are doing. Excited. I would love to take that. We've talked about taking that certification. I want to learn more about that too, because I just think in a lot of things that I do, um, just bringing something fun and unique to organizations, again, that takes a different approach. As you know, you have to go do this, but it really just opening doors for conversation, which is what I'm really all about. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
we find a way to have this conversation that might not be easy just to call out and say. So
Yeah. Oh, I think you would love the program.
yeah.
It's really fun. But a lot of the resources are available for free in the Play Concierge platform, so you can get a head
Yes.
start on all that
Yes.
stuff.
And we're gonna put links to Alex's information and website in the bio or in the description, so you all can check them out and see all the amazing tools and things that they have. But before we close out, Alex, I just want to give you the floor, the opportunity to just share any last minute nuggets that you want the world to know.
Um, Next time you find yourself sort of idle for a few minutes, like don't scroll on your phone. Like actually interact with the world. You don't know when a new idea is going to come. You don't know when some major insight that resolves a challenge you've been dealing with before is going to happen. But one of the beautiful things about games and play is you don't really know what's going to happen. There's rules and there's structure, but like the outcome is totally unclear, and you just have to be in that like, well, I'll just wait. And so much of social media content is like everything is already prescribed, and it's just there, and you're just passively participating. So I think make sure to make some opportunities to not just be a passive recipient of other people's content and motivations, and be present with the people that you're with or the environment that you're in.
I love that. Love that. Thank you again for being here. Love always
Thank you for
having
having me. This was
conversation.
this is
Yes.
awesome, and did not totally met expectations that it was going to be an awesome conversation.
Yes. Yes. All right. Until next time.